how aware of the interlocking aspect of Legos during the animation did you have to be? Taking the ground, for example, were you forced to place the character on specific locations based on where the Lego would naturally interlock? At the start, we're trying to make when they were walking, the minifigs were walking. We were trying to figure out how they were going to walk on the pegs all the way through the show, and it was mind-boggling. You know, how do they turn? How do they turn? How do they walk diagonally across across the across the pegs, the fields of pegs, and as the show evolved, we got more and more relaxed about their walking, and in the end, often the characters would just walk across the top of the pegs because, you know, unless it was a story point we were trying to accentuate, I think, you know, the limitations imposed by that particular problem would be too great, and they proved to be too difficult. And it turned out that a lot of the sets just had flat tiles as paving. So that made our life a lot easier. We could just animate them as if they were walking. But with Lego was very specific about how props and things should be made, and you know, when we did our brick building, we did have to make sure that the pieces locked together properly, because, you know, it's being true to the material again. It has to look real. It has to look like someone really made it out of Lego. Here's one here. Did you shoot acted out reference to do shots or play around with Lego minifigures in the planning stage? I didn't see. A few people were working with acted out reference, and obviously a few people did some stop motion tests, like I showed you with the Duplo character. I've got to say it wasn't that heavily used on this show, from my perspective. Compared to things like Guardians, where you know, whole scenes were acted out beforehand and cut to the dialogue before we started animating. But we definitely did play with Lego at our desks, so we had, you know, we were able to see what can a minifig do, you know, how far can we push it, how do we solve this problem with a minifig, it's got to turn around. So there was a lot of people like fooling with minifigs on the desks, which is great fun.
Say is that I feel like it's the opposite of the we have the uncanny valley, right? We have these movies that are getting a little bit better now, but this is like the opposite of the uncanny valley, where we're in an area that's just so simplified, but it's just so appealing. I can't get over the limitations that you guys work with. Like, did you guys literally not move the arms more than a Lego? Like they never ever go outward like that? It's, you know,
that was the theory, actually. That was the, you know, that was the brief, and we did end up having to cheat quite a bit, and it depended on which animator was doing the shot too. So some were more liberal than others, but one workaround we ended up using, because sometimes, you know, they do need to hold something in front of their face, or you just can't get a Lego minifig to do that. And Chris McKay always argued there was not a complete consensus amongst the three creatives, the three and the one Phil. You know, Chris McKay was a lot more lenient on that sort of breaking the rig thing, and I think Phil was very adamant that it should be, you know, only what you could do with the basic minifig. But Chris McKay used to say, you know, if we were on a stop motion set, because he worked on Robot Chicken for years, or a lot of episodes, they used to, you know, they'd break an arm off and kind of use, he called it sticky wax, to reposition the arm where they needed it. So we took quite a few liberties like that. So if you've got the off-camera arm, you know, it's hidden by the body. You know, we do this sort of thing, pull the arm off, and, you know, if they needed to drink, we do a lot of that sort of stuff. And actually, a lot of stuff, I don't know if you can see, this is great having the camera view. Is anyone seeing this?
Yes.
Or you got the camera? There's quite a few shots where we just had a completely separate rig, and we'd And so you say they need to get them to drink, and we just keep bringing another hand from below camera, and that got around a lot of problems with the limitations of the rig. There's the shots at the start of the film where where Emmett's in a shower, where he's shaving, and when he turns his alarm clock off, and that's completely puppeted. There's just an arm pulled out of the rig and waving around near the alarm clock to get that effect. We weren't completely religious about it all the time. There was a little bit of play we were allowed. What's interesting, I saw Blue Sky's latest trailer for their Peanuts project, and I was really pleased to see that they'd adopted a kind of, I don't know if it's arrogant to say a similar sort of style, but I think there's a lot more kind of traditional animation tricks and style involved in that trailer than I've seen before. Even with like expression lines popping off faces, and I saw a couple of moves that Charlie Brown did. They'd start on ones, go to twos, and then finish on fours for the last few moves as he tilts his head back. I'm really looking forward to the animated features and animated projects that take on this kind of what do you call it? The kind of freedom that you have when you work by hand. And I'd love to see more. It's such a powerful medium, and it's got such a strong, such a long heritage of imagination and such unusual ways of looking at the world and unusual effects and even at the start of this project we're looking at animations from 1910 from Ladislav Starovich, I think his name is, who was a stop motion animator, but he was an entomologist first, who studied insects, and he wanted to see his insects come to life. He wanted to show how their mating rituals work, but he couldn't get the real ones to do it under the hot film lights in the studio, so he took insect carcasses and put rigs in them and started making movies with them. I mean, it's that kind of oddness, I guess, and creativity that it would be great to see finding its way more into the mainstream, I think. And it's up to us as animators to push for it, because we're the only ones who know about this stuff. Maybe I'll just add, I don't know, a lot of you are learning to animate now from, from very experienced animators, and I'd love for I'm not sure, Dave, if your school incorporates a bit of drawing and a bit of stop motion, but if I can encourage you all to just have a go at the older technologies as you're learning, to complement your CG studies, I think it's a very worthwhile activity. You get a real feel for how it used to be done, and you don't need to do classes necessarily. The early animators didn't have classes to attend, so they just had a go. So I'd encourage you all to do that in your spare time.
By the way, this is brought to you by AnimSchool. We teach mostly modeling, rigging, and animation, but we have drawing classes for the students and design classes and things like that. Lots of art classes that are supplemental to the students each term. We don't teach stop motion, which is I'm now ashamed to admit in front of you, but that's not something we do. But it's I think maybe most people, I hope, have experimented with it in their youth. So a lot of ways
it's the easiest form of animation to try, because you don't need to be a great drawer. You can take an object and make it work. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of what Blue Sky now is doing with Peanuts. It is kind of similar. It's another kind of groundbreaking kind of look. So I'm really excited about that too. And I think the coolest thing about Lego Movie is that we're gonna get more of it, because it was successful and everyone loved it, and it's just visually so awesome. And well, that's the right word, isn't it? Thank you so much for your time preparing this and being able to field questions. And I'm very excited about the movie, what you guys did. And when you delve a little deeper into discussions, you realize, wow, there's a lot that goes into all those decisions that your average moviegoer doesn't even think about because you're too busy enjoying it. But again, thanks so much. This was really great to visit with you for a while. So.
My pleasure. Thanks, David.